come back to the symptoms a little bit later in terms of then how do you know this is a yeast infection and this is the normal discharge, and especially during the fertility window for most women, because most of them were like, okay, is this an infection? Because then there's no symptoms, there's nothing, it's just a discharge and then that's it.
Yeah.
But then for this one, of course, there's that aspect of irritation, pain, and all those things. But in terms of after infection and by the time you start noticing the symptoms, right? Does it have like a window where it probably, you know, multiplies? Because you talked about an aspect of overgrowth. So then, yeah, is there like a window where before you start noticing the symptoms, then probably it has taken time to either multiply, overgrow?
Not really.
Okay.
Yeah, not really.
Or is it immediately after the infection you start
probably,
noticing
yes.
the symptoms?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. That's interesting. Now, so do we have like the different types of the same as far as yeast infection is concerned?
So yeast infection, as I said earlier, it can occur in many parts of the human body.
Yeah.
It can be in the mouth. You've heard of oral thrush. It could be in the food pipe, what we call the esophagus. But today we are focusing on the vulva and the vagina.
Yeah.
So for that category, then we can classify it into two. We call it either complicated or uncomplicated yeast infection.
All right.
So for the uncomplicated one, this one occurs mainly in women who are healthy. They have a background of just being healthy. Most of the time, the symptoms will be very mild or very moderate, and with treatment it goes away. But there are situations where it's complicated, and in that category we put things like if you have recurrent infection, and when I say recurrent, I mean you've had infections maybe about 4 times or more within a year, within 12 months, or it occurs in the background of other problems. Maybe you have been ill, you have been on antibiotics, or you have diabetes, or you have things that have lowered your immunity like HIV. So that we call complicated. Yes.
And we'll talk about then how this is possible, because again, even during my research, I came across something very interesting. That, I mean, pregnancy, yeah, we hear a lot of women complain about the same, especially during pregnancy. But if you have diabetes, and diabetes that of course it's not managed, then your chances of getting yeast infection is pretty high.
Yes.
And then stress, and I'm like, wait, diabetes, like, how, you know? So I think we'll talk about it more in depth in terms of then how this is made possible. But then again, we've had women complain of then recurrent infections, not necessarily yeast infection, but other types of infections, but it's so recurrent, you know? So is it that there is something that they are doing that then brings about the recurrent you know, of infections, or that is just the nature, let's say, of a particular infection?
So most vaginal infections, they are similar in terms of their symptoms. So someone will have the itching and vaginal discharge or burning and soreness, and they may think they have yeast infection, but it could be something else. There are other infections caused by bacteria or protozoa, as I mentioned earlier, that sort of imitate each other. So what we see people doing is you try to treat it at home, and you end up wasting more time because you're not so sure what you're treating, because the symptoms are similar, so you don't have a clear diagnosis. So you treat it with anything. As you said, many people are using antibiotics, and you see yeast infection is not caused by bacteria, so antibiotics will not help. So you end up getting a lot of recurrence or repeated infections because probably you did not even treat it well in the first place. You were treating a different thing for something else.
So then, be it as it may, so then how, in terms of the symptoms, how distinct can this be so that you know that this is a yeast infection, not a bacterial infection or a viral infection? Is there, let's say, one thing or two things that then, you know, distinguishes between the bacterial infection, viral infection, and, you know, yeast infection?
Yeast infection.
Almost all of them are the same, you know?
So unfortunately, in terms of symptoms, they're pretty similar.
Oh, okay.
So you may not be able to distinguish it per se by symptoms. What will help you narrow down to exactly what is causing the infection is maybe through a laboratory investigation or when the doctor examines, and even that sometimes may not suffice. You may still have to do an investigation in the lab for you to confirm. So there is no a particular symptom that will make you say for sure this is yeast infection. Some people say when you have the discharge that is whitish in the background of itchiness, it may most of the time be yeast infections, but again, there are a lot of errors with that as well.
With the same. So in short, do not self-diagnose.
Do not self-diagnose.
Which
It's
we
not
do
accurate.
all the time, you know, and